I am a few minutes late tonight. I'm sorry. I was actually set up ahead of time, except I was playing around with a track from Mata Gaijinka. Recently, I guess it's part of the lockdown, Tokyo Digital Crew is writing again. We've been making tracks. I released my first track in a long time today, actually. So I always get this funny error on my screen. Please use a keyframe frequency of 4 seconds or less. I always get this error and I don't know what it means and I want to fix it, but I know I shouldn't be fixing it live on the air, but I'd like to do that. Anyway, so we've been making tracks and I was, Mata Gaijinka actually shared with me her stems, which I was just setting up as live loops on here, and I was thinking that perhaps if I can get through the topics, I mean there really is only one topic this week, in spite of my efforts to try to have other things to talk about. Ideally I wanted to make this show about everything but coronavirus, since that's all that we're hearing about. And it's kind of funny as well, in Japan they do not call it COVID-19. It never caught on. They keep calling it new coronavirus. Of course, coronavirus is a generic family of diseases. At least they don't call it the China virus or whatever, like I guess they're doing in some other places. But yeah, it's in spite of trying to find interesting news to share from anything else, there really isn't anything else going on right now. So it is just this. I do have the latest roundups if we do have some time. I'm thinking I'm getting better at using this on the fly with GarageBand. I've even got a kind of a camera hooked up over here that I can give a nice overhead view that I've got rigged up. So hopefully I'll get some time. I can get into a bit of that at the end. But for now, I'll just give you the latest updates on what's going on in Tokyo. I hope that you are all staying safe and well. You are socially distancing and staying at home. That in itself was something. I had a bit of a chat earlier in the week. It's kind of funny. The term in Japan, people kind of understand some basics, like, staying at home or whatever, but the idea of when you're out of social distancing, you could look at all the press conferences, whereas overseas everyone was very spaced out, as in spaced apart. In Japan, everything was still crammed together in that concept. I guess people are still used to being hygienic and wearing face masks, but being, through no choice, through being on the trains, through being crammed together. And something I've noticed maybe hasn't been catching on so much, but there again, there's been a lot of messaging and education about it this week, and we'll be talking a bit about that. But no, the main thing that I really want to do is give you all a sense of what's going on, particularly from a Tokyo resident's perspective. What's going on at the moment. Everyone was talking this time last week that, this week we'd be in a lockdown, that we're declaring the state of emergency. And I suppose that's theoretically what it's supposed to be. But it's really not. It's actually pretty much more of the same, only with more guilt and social pressure. I'll be talking a bit about that as well tonight. First thing is, who is in the comments? I realize I gave very little notice tonight. Oh, well, it's the same time every week, so, just come around, especially if you check my Twitter. I'll always send a link right before I'm about to start. We'll see who's in the comments already. Carlos Diamante, good to have you with us, and thank you for reminding me that I was a little bit late. You are, of course, correct about that. Andrew Mobile, up as always, late at night in Melbourne watching. Thank you for joining. Eating a few chocolate Easter bunnies later. Well, yes, and I must admit, no Easter in Japan, so I don't really have much of a sense, other than the rest of the world is shutting down. Even countries like Singapore that aren't really, like Christian. I guess the thing about Singapore is they have lots of religions and they kind of take holidays for all of them, which is kind of cool. Of course, in Japan, very much a minority religion, so I totally forget about all of these. You work on Christmas, you work in Easter. Although I would point out, as someone who is raised, technically, who is raised in Church of England myself, there are theories, of course, that there's all these small French villages, all these people who believe that Jesus came by and dropped a finger or something like that. All of these, there's like 10,000 fingers of Christ around the relics of Europe and whatnot. And of course, you may have heard, there's a stream. There are people all over Japan who believe that Christ came to Japan. And I would say, if there was any proof of that, there are lots of stories, there's evidence of a person who came in, a strange person who came around and started preaching something which is a lot like Christianity, but decided probably was a missionary, but then somewhere along the lines thought it would just be easier to tell the story if he just made it about himself. But I would say if there was any compelling proof that Jesus did come to Japan, it was the fact that he showed up to work on Monday in spite of the fact it was a holiday. Because that is the most Japanese thing, and that is why we are working on Monday. None of this chocolate Easter egg stuff, which I do miss, so please enjoy those Easter eggs. I digress. Who else we got in the comments? We have Mr. Cordy Chep, as always. Yes, with a bar of butter in one hand, I suppose. Good to. I just realised that sounds a lot weirder than I meant it to sound, but it sounds weird any way that you say it, doesn't it? Tech Art 2, howdy, good to see you. Olivia D, good to see you. The J-Vlog, salutations. I like the 7-mark salutations thing. I never quite do that right, but good to see you. We've got Simon Latonoma, good to see you. A up indeed. We've got Believe in Yourself, good to have you along. We have Quint Ragged, good to see you. Say hello if you're there, by the way. It's always nice to see who's around. Especially on an Easter, it's nice of you guys to come in on a vacation and keep me company. We've got Chris Jack, hello, good to see you. Did I miss anybody before then? No, I did not. We've got 49 Star, long time no see. Hey, good. And you've been making any tracks lately, 49 Star? I've been getting into that. Sergeant Bilko, good to see you. Yeah, that's all that we've got for now. Yes, indeed, hello to all. Let's get into the topics, and if there's some time left, I might show you what I've been jamming on with GarageBand. So yes, boom, topics. Now this is I just added this one. So Abe, he wanted to, send out an image of staying at home, having a relaxed family life, and personally, what do you expect? He's the heir of a political dynasty in Japan. He is, the prime minister is quite well to do. He doesn't have any kids. He leads a comfortable life. What can we say? But of course, they wanted to make the prime minister feel a little bit more, familiar with everybody. So they decided to put a picture of a lovely, cute dog there. That does not show up if I do that way. So I guess I'm going to play it here. So here he is enjoying life at home. Of course, it didn't have the marching, angry French people in the original version, and now that video is not even playing. But it had scenes from Abe on this very expensive antique European furniture. Wearing his, it looks a little bit like the royal family, kind of at home, trying to awkwardly act normal, sipping tea, as Japanese people do. Sitting back and relaxing, reading a good book, pretty much whatever the Queen would advise us to do, Abe is doing in the same way that the Queen would do it on the, just like a regular Japanese person. Maybe I did break the video. The video is bad. Razo, good to see you. Let the games begin. Games have indeed begun. I came late as well, so we're all okay there. But yes, sitting on a chair, look at that, he's watching a bit of TV. So look, for me, heaven forbid I ever become a political PR person, but my suggestion for the Prime Minister is that the next time they reshoot this, he needs to be wearing a parka, woolly hat, because most houses in Japan are not properly insulated. He should be sitting in a great big kotatsu, a big doom. I call it a doom. I'm New Zealander, but I call it a doom because I'm an Aussie man. That's what being up for calling a doom and a doom. That's Australia's thing for doom. If you have the big kotatsu doom pulled up over him, he should have a kotatsu with a newspaper, preferably of a sports newspaper with dodgy photos all over it. He should have the remote control, a bowl of mandarins, which he should be peeling while he's watching some form of baseball or discussion on TV, and he should be shouting at his wife in the kitchen, saying, "Bring me another beer." That. I mean, if you want to make him look like one of the people, sipping tea. I'm sure this is actually real. That's the thing. I feel bad for the people who are beating up on him like this, because, like I said, it's actually quite a decent thing to do. It's kind of funny. He's actually taken good PR advice. This was good PR advice. I think the end of the Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, he popped up as Mario. Apparently he hated doing that. It was awesome. So yeah, I don't know. But that's my suggestion. Next time he's going to go to not even Uniqlo. He's got to go somewhere cheaper than Uniqlo. He's got to get a big parka. He's got to get a woolly hat. He's going to be sitting in a kotatsu. He's going to be watching the horse racing. He's going to have the sports paper, the mandarins. He's got to prove he's a man of the people. But that was still quite fun nonetheless. I quite enjoyed that. Oh no, you can't hear me. The system audio is too loud compared to the mic. I see it now. You can't hear me. Wait. Oh, I get it. The music from the video. Can you hear me now? Oh, so I get it. When I pressed play on the AirPlay, all the sound went through. Is that right? Oh no. Can you hear me now? Sorry about the music. That. So I just made a really good speech there, and you missed it all because I destroyed your eardrums by. Okay, lesson learned. Do not activate AirPlay. You know what? I'll make sure the audio for that is muted in future. I'm so sorry about that. I can't even see where that would be. I guess it would be over here. I'm tempted to play with the settings now. You can hear me right now, right? I'm sorry about that. He has been panic buying for 20 years. I don't know who has been ears are bleeding. Well, I couldn't hear any audio, so I'm fine. So don't worry about me, of course. I'm sorry about that. Shubas, good to see you, by the way. Buenos dias from Panama. Panama, I should be saying. Wing Star, hey, good to see you. Yes, indeed. Headphones were released from your eardrums. Okay, well, lesson learned. I apologize for that, and I will I won't try to figure that out by doing a demonstration of that again. But my apologies for that sound thing. Yes, perhaps putting butter in your ears or something like that. That could help. One mic and one system. The JVlog, yeah. So the problem is that I'm right now capturing this via a special app which captures like an AirPlay, and it's called Airstream. And the thing is, I can't see an audio controller for Airstream, so I don't know how that came in. And the only way I could do it is if I made it play again, so then I could see where the music was popping up, and then I could mute it. But if I did that, I would kill you all again, and I don't want to do that. And yes, indeed, I can see you all have pitchforks waiting for me now, so I am not going to fix it. I just won't do it again. I apologize. Okay, so the next thing, moving right along, that I have is this, and there's been this weird thing that's emerged this week. I guess that's a story that I'm about to tell about what's been going on, but essentially the Ministry of Health seems to have been benched because it's judged that between the cruise liner and everything else, their initial handling of this outbreak in Japan was deemed to be not good enough. And so they were, hey, Tokyo 503, good to see you. So basically, they were sort of put on the back bench, and they decided to shift the main minister in charge of the crisis from the Ministry of Health to the Ministry of Economic Revitalization. This is a ministry, not the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. I got confused about this myself. This is actually a more minor ministry, but it's dedicated to spending money on recovering from the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. This guy Nishimura, who's in charge of it, the role of his ministry is to maximize the economic recovery, and basically to foster the economy. And they put this person who's in charge of building up the economy in charge of the pandemic response, which strikes me as odd. And it really came out this week where we saw Tokyo, which wanted to really impose measures to try to reduce the amount of crowding and people going to work. By putting in requests for closures of different kinds of businesses. But remember, are just requests. The Minister of Economic Revitalization said, no, do not be shutting down businesses. And in fact, we'll be getting into this, but when some of the department stores decided that they would do their bit by closing their underground food courts and whatnot, the minister actually called the department store chains in to admonish them for shutting down for public safety reasons, saying that stay open, because he wants all the farmers and whatnot to be able to continue to sell their food in these places, and he doesn't want them shutting down. So he's actually been and he's been openly fighting with Tokyo, where Tokyo has been trying to close facilities. The minister in charge of the pandemic response has been fighting to keep everything open and to prevent Tokyo, and he's been saying to Tokyo, if Tokyo is going to close down more things than we've said they can close down, we're not going to pay any compensation to anyone in Tokyo. Tokyo can pay for it itself. So he's actually fighting to block measures to halt the pandemic. And instead of that, what he's doing is he's going online on TV and he's saying that if you are not teleworking and if you are going out, you should just be ashamed. But the reason that people are going out and they're going to work and they're not teleworking is because their businesses are staying open and they're forcing them to keep working. So it's kind of funny. He's working on, it's a bit like recycling, where rather than make the bottling companies and the plastic companies responsible for recycling, they kind of have pushed the message that it's up to it's the fault of people who throw litter, and that people, if they recycle, which none of it gets recycled, but somehow the responsibility for plastic waste is on people, not on the plastic creators. And it's the same here. He's sort of pushing that everyone needs to go to work, but you should be very, very guilty about it, and you should be wishing you could stay at home. And that's the way the national government's doing it, and it's weird. They're going through this sort of, they are really stuck between a rock and a hard place. That's kind of been the outcome of the debate, which I'll go through the stories more this week. So I guess I started this week, you may have seen. Radri from Waikam, Japan asked me if I could join his Twitch stream, so I actually wore a t-shirt I am forbidden from wearing on YouTube because it's got Twitch written on it. So I wore my Twitch t-shirt, and I joined Radri for that for about an hour. I tell you what, I know the technical issues are a feature of this show, and we've had a couple tonight, I know, but Radri, wow, he's really got his technical glitch game well down. I mean, I was actually I spent 45 minutes talking with no sound. It was only Radri. Which is probably good. So I actually had a lot of fun. I was the most profane that I've ever been on the internet the entire time. It was actually, when we got it all going, it was a good chat. He wanted my summary of my understanding of what was going on with the lockdown in Tokyo, which I gave. You were pretty much informed, but it was nice to have someone asking me the question and to be focused on that topic for a while. So you can still go and watch that on Red Culture on Twitch. It was, I thought the show went pretty well once it got going. One thing, I mean, this is something that's been the bane of my existence. I, of course, work with these things. Hanko, there is actually, nowadays, for a start, hanko are typically thought of as the thing that you put on your real estate, or on your apartment contract or whatever. And it's really traditional in Japan, I mean, for hundreds of years before Japan opened up, that you would seal a contract with a seal. But of course, it doesn't just mean that. It's basically literally a stamp of assent or approval. And so it gets used for all kinds of things. Signing for delivery boxes, marking that someone has read a document. When I used to work in Fujitsu, for example, it was typical that when you would read a contract or mark it up, there would be like a check sheet on the top where you would, fill in all the information. This is a contract about this. It's needed by here. Here's what we're looking out for. And here are the 3 people who will review it. When you've reviewed it, you would always have a hanko, which you'd press on the paper, and you'd put the paper on, and you'd hand it over to the next desk. And there's a lot of business processes like this in Japan, where, for example, receipts will get, in order to avoid fraud, you actually have to hand in the original receipts. It'll get checked by somebody, stamped that, yes, I checked it. They'll give it to someone else. They'll double check it and put their stamp on before it can be cashed out. Internal approvals, just proving that you were at work that day and did your job, as well as everything up to binding contracts and real estate contracts and everything. Hankos are really, really widely used. Now, where I work in a legal department, and where we, in recent years, there's been actually a move towards not using paper at all for contracts. You can use electronic signatures. Even electronic hankos exist, and you can use them, and they're perfectly binding and valid, provided that they're properly used. The thing is, most companies in Japan are still barely even, open to the idea of using these things, and they're very, very married to this idea that business processes are intimately integrated with this. And this means that even with companies that can do telework, of course, there's so many cases now where you have companies that are requiring still people to come in with their receipts. Like if they're at home and they're expensing their phone expenses and they're coming in, they still have to give their phone bills to their kacho, who also has to come in and seal, and their workers have to come in to get their documents like hankoed. And it's kind of ridiculous, and it's one of the things which it's really an archaic practice that's unnecessary. But it's one of the many things that's holding people back. There was a survey taken that apparently overall only 26% of companies, I think was the number, are teleworking. Now remember, of course, most jobs you can't telework. There are jobs that construction or delivery work or working in restaurants or whatever. There's things that you obviously cannot do over the internet. So, but apparently taking even that percentage of stuff which can be teleworked, there are these things that even when people are teleworking, they're still often being forced to come into the office, which is ridiculous. But this is a thing that happens. So yes, indeed. Um, why come Japan? Is TQ is doing the same thing? A strange knockoff? Perhaps it is. Who knows? There'll be something edited and put on a podcast soon. Since we had lockdown already, felt like it needed to be updated a bit. Yeah, indeed. Well, this is the thing at the moment. Information is changing. It'll be out of date. It was probably out of date 3 days ago. But very glad to be with you. And Ahmed also, long time no see. Hey, good to see you. I feel like I want to say hello in Tunisia, and I'm worried that I'm going to be wrong when I say that. Tunisia, right? Ahmed, it's great to see you back. Ben Duncan, also great to see you back. When come Japan? Yeah, maybe he changed the word there. Who knows? But hey, good to see some more people there in the comments. Hanko culture, it sucks. It's something that I'm dealing with. There's been a big debate going on everywhere, but certainly it's been going on in Japan as to whether COVID-19 is a problem that we need to be pressing upon Shubas. Oh, really? Panama as well? Algeria? Damn it! I was going to say Algeria, but I'd hate to say Algeria when it was Tunisia. Then it sounded like I was bullying Tunisia. So yeah, I'm sorry about that, Ahmed. But yes, Algeria. Great to see you. Good. Long time no see, man. What are they doing in Algeria, by the way? Are they locking down like in other places? Panama looks like they are, according to Shubas. Which, yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Yasser, hey, we've got lots of people in here. Great to see you, Yasser. So, yeah, this is a really interesting sort of a graph. You know, is it old? Is it young people being irresponsible and getting it? Is it old? Is it elderly people who are just blaming young people? But here it is. This is from a week ago, but this is for Tokyo. These dots represent all the people that have coronavirus at different ages, and the white dots represent fatal cases. And it's interesting. Cases under 10. The right hand side is women, and the left hand side is men. So clearly, men getting it a lot more than women. But what you can see is up until 10, very, very few cases. Although you're not necessarily safe by being under 10 at all. In fact, you know, there are some infants who have died from it, boys and girls. 20s, certainly bigger than 80s, but actually not that prominent. Probably because a lot of the time they're asymptomatic and, you know, they're not actually getting tested or recognized would be part of the case. And again, there are fatalities in those numbers. So again, you're not immune if you catch it when you're young, but it is true that there's a high rate of asymptomatic cases. 30s to 40s, this is what's most interesting. Check it out, 40-year men in their 40s, people like myself, we are all over it there, you know, and fatalities, same number of fatalities as people in the 50s, although a lot of women in the 50s are not surviving it as opposed to the 40s. But you can see these are the people who are going into work to press the hankos, and yeah, they are definitely catching it. This is the thing, these are the people who are not taking measures. And I don't know if you can treat 30-year-olds maybe, but certainly not 40-year-olds. You can't say young people going out on dates, you know, spreading it around. You can see, however, the white dots definitely increase as you go up. 50s, 60s, actually not so bad compared to 50s. But 70s, 80s, there are fewer cases here. And again, this is a long time ago. And I'm sure that these numbers are nothing like representative, but watching the distribution is actually just super interesting. This is how it is in Tokyo at the moment. Kyoto Sanata, long time no see. Hey, great to see you. And yes, indeed, we're all doing well, and I hope that you're keeping well as well. Good to see you. Hiko's going on dates and spreading the SARS-2 virus. I don't know, is that what they're calling it nowadays? I don't know, I can't keep up with all these pop terms. So, yeah, I was mentioning earlier that Abe and Koike were tussling. They were fighting over the business closures. This was, that's a good word for it, actually. What was definitely happening was the Tokyo governor who was herself a former government minister in Abe's cabinet. So, you know, she's actually an experienced national-level LDP politician. Her story, for those of you, by the way, who aren't familiar, she... after being quite successful, she was Minister for the Environment. I think she had a number of portfolios, but she was actually and proved to herself. There is a thing that the LDP nationwide, only 5% of politicians who represent the LDP, this is either in seats and in party lists, including local government and national government, only somewhat 5% are women. And yet there's been all this pressure. Abe has made it a goal to sort of get more women into leadership roles. So clearly what happened in a few cases where there were women who he kind of pushed into these roles before they were ready. To me, is it Keiko Obuchi? She was a classic case. She seemed very promising, smart, great background, but also quite young, and was being managed by her father, former Prime Minister father's handlers, who, there was corruption and mishandling, and there were a lot of cases where people just clearly weren't ready for these sort of roles. And I think Koike proved herself when she was in government to be an exception to this. She really, I didn't really like her very much, but I always thought she didn't seem, outrageous or incompetent or not ready for her role, which has happened, in some other cases. There have been some spectacular failures, which is really unfortunate, by the way, as well. And the solution is not continuing to have 5% women politicians and forcing them all into top roles. It's to get more people on get more women on your list in the first place. But Koike is someone who, in spite of being through an extremely patriarchal system, got to the top of Japanese government very successfully, and then decided that, the same as Shintaro Ishihara, she thought it'd be she'd be able to make more of an impact if she was able to come into Tokyo. So she told the LDP that she wanted to run for the Tokyo governorship, and the Tokyo LDP said no. This is when they were going for Ishihara's, when Ishihara was going to step down. She said, I want Ishihara's role, and Tokyo LDP said, no, we've already decided who it's going to be. There's no point even running for it. So she wanted to run anyway, and they blocked it. So she left the LDP, she set up her own party, and she ran against the LDP, and she kicked its ass. She won, and she became governor. So she kind of humiliated the national LDP when they sort of tried to force her into the back seats. Power to her for that. That was really, really cool. And, she took over the burden of the Olympics, which had been sort of won by Ishihara beforehand. And she's been doing that, and again, it hasn't been sort of spectacular, but it's been doing good enough. But I would say in the last week, when we saw the numbers in Tokyo rapidly increasing, she was advocating very strongly that, firmer measures than the national government were taking were needed for Tokyo. And she was saying, basically pushing the government very hard to declare a national emergency and to let her take the measures that she saw fit for requesting businesses to close. The emergency was declared as promised, but when she started saying the facilities that she was going to close, the national government, which was obviously both Tokyo and the national government, were getting lobbied by different groups. And so when she said that she wanted to close down pachinko and izakayas, the pachinko and izakaya industry representatives clearly went to the central government, and they said, don't let them do that. So the central government ministers, starting with the Minister of Economic Revitalization and Abe, said, hey, we didn't say pachinko, we didn't say izakayas, don't be closing our izakayas. We're here at the parliament, we're having a stressful day, we want to go play pachinko and go to izakayas and go to hostess bars afterwards. Don't shut down our fun. So they were actually, the government, they started attacking Koike, and when Koike was going to release a list of the closures that were going to be announced, they blocked it. They actually said, no, we're not going to allow any prefecture, even though the law is for prefectures to decide what businesses to shut down. They were like, no, Tokyo, we don't want you shutting down all of these businesses that, that we like to go to. So we don't want you taking measures to fight against the coronavirus. And it really put her, and she was having none of it. And she was going on TV saying that, basically calling them out for saying that they're slowing things down, and both were remaining constructive. She was saying that, we're going to try to sit around, I'm going to delay my announcement until we agree, but it's urgent and we need to do it right now. And she put a lot of pressure, and she kind of got her way. There were certain categories of business that the government didn't approve of, but she passed a Tokyo ordinance to be able to get separately to request closures. So the national government has been kind of outraged at being upstaged by the Tokyo governor, by Koike. And she kind of got her way in the end, but they sort of showed their resentment with the Minister of Finance, Taro Aso by name and by nature. He came in and he said, well, if Tokyo is going to go and decide its own what businesses to close, they can pay compensation. Tokyo's got lots of money, that we shouldn't be. And this is the point. All of these politicians from regions outside of Tokyo are worried that if Tokyo shuts down certain types of businesses, like, for example, if they shut down all the izakayas, then all of the sake suppliers from the countryside, where all the politicians are from, are not going to be able to sell them in Tokyo. And they're worried about their money. So they're saying, Tokyo, don't shut them down. And they're actually kind of, making some spiteful comments saying that, well, if Tokyo wants to go its own way, then we're not going to compensate businesses in Tokyo. And that'll be the governor's fault. So they're literally fighting directly with the governor who's trying to stop a pandemic, and they're fighting against it, including the minister who's in charge of the virus response. So from all of this, if you ask me, really, a lot of people have been saying on Twitter, I've been saying it myself, that I think Tokyo apparently right now seems to have better and more competent leadership. And from a woman from the LDP, formerly from the LDP, now she's independent no less, she's looking like a much more competent prime minister and leader in a crisis like this than anyone in the national government. I mean, right now, every time the national government, Abe was there cuddling his dog with loud drums, sorry about that. And everyone else is basically there arguing for meat coupons, tourism coupons, like tourism is what you should be promoting in a pandemic. Taro Aso threatening to cut off funding to Tokyo because they want to shut down pachinko and bars. And at the same time, the Ministry for Economic Revitalization are calling people in to tell them off. And, calling in department stores to tell them off for closing. Just kind of crazy. And the thing is, the national government is here in Tokyo, so to me it looks as much like they're jealous of getting upstaged by Koike looking like a more competent leader than them as anything else. And you can tell Koike is obviously tough. I mean, she wouldn't have gotten to where she is in such a male-dominated area if she wasn't extremely competent and able to pull through it. I tell you, she's looking really good, and they are looking pretty crap right now. So that's kind of what's going on with that. Hey, Erin, good to see you, and SBYLP1. And yes, indeed, it's been tough for a lot of people with unemployment going up in Japan. Not just in Japan, obviously, elsewhere as well, but certainly tough for day workers. There's been a big situation with, apparently there are 4,000 people in Tokyo who live in internet cafes, and they've asked for the internet cafes to be shut down, so the governments are providing facilities to allow people to sleep in gymnasiums and whatnot. But again, there's been a lot of people in different situations that have been affected by this all over the place. And indeed, very nice of Aaron to say, and I agree, hang in there, SBYLP1, hope you're okay there. Yes, so that's been going on, and just kind of another example of surprising people sort of starting to shine in these circumstances, as crises often do. They often bring out who's good and who isn't, to listen to. Hikakin, it's kind of funny. My 10-year-old son recently was he recently said, "Oh, Dad, look at this, Hikakin. He's talking to the governor." I'm like, "Dude, do you know about Hikakin?" But this is I guess 10-year-olds are kind of his demographic, and he's been kind of mocked a little. He's the most successful YouTuber in Japan by a long way. But he's never really been a Philip DeFranco. He's always been more of a kind of funny guy making beatboxy sounds and doing kind of weird stuff and having chips named after him and stuff like that. But he actually did a great interview with Koike, where just very, very clear questions and answers, and Koike showed as well. She's just very good at communications. She gave a lot of questions about what people should be doing, and how they can stay safe, and what's social distancing, and what should kids be thinking about when they go out playing, and all sorts of basic everyday stuff. Just very, very clear. I mean, all in Japanese, of course, but still very. And this is the other thing. Koike is of course fluent in English, and she provides updates on the internet. The Tokyo updates are available on YouTube, and she puts them up in English and in Japanese, and she's fluent. She speaks perfectly in English as well, and she's giving multilingual updates. And her communications are awesome. And again, these are all things that I'm not seeing anywhere from the central government. So, she's really doing a great job. And Hikakin, I mean, he's been getting plaudits everywhere. You've probably seen all over Twitter, all the people have been so impressed with how real Philip DeFranco style, wow, he can do the news, which was surprising. So that was a thing. What else is going on? So indeed, people talking about Hikakin there. This is Koike talking about gyms, internet cafes to suspend business. This is causing problems, but that's a thing. And here is while Koike is saying please shut down and please stop spreading viruses around and whatnot. Then you've got the current minister in charge who's taken over from the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Economic Revitalization has said, I need to revitalize the economy, so don't restrict businesses. This guy, Nishimura, what's his first name again? Yasutoshi Nishimura. He has been fighting Tokyo. He's been fighting Tokyo as irresponsible for asking businesses to close down to allow people to stay at home when they're being forced to go into work. And he's saying, don't ruin the economy. He's actually called in, where businesses have done things to play their part, he's called them in and told them off. And yet when he does public speeches, he says, it's up to individuals to make sure that you're being responsible and not going out. But we want businesses to keep working and to not, and to figure out somehow how to have an 80% reduction in interaction, but without being told to close down. So right now he's looking pretty crap and she's looking pretty good, is the current situation. More stuff about hankos. This is the thing. Nante kate, how could you be so selfish? This is that Minister Nishimura. He called in the 4 largest department store chains into to lambast them for closing down in the interest of public safety their underground food courts. Why? Because he's concerned that in fact this is actually the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry called them in specifically because they were worried about the suppliers in the countryside not being able to sell their square watermelons in the underground food courts under these places. They shut them down and they're like, how could you be so selfish? was what they said. The Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry said to these places that are trying to stop a pandemic in Tokyo. So, screw those guys. Honestly, the national government, something's wrong with them. Another thing which you may have noticed that's been a kind of a topic of conversation is that there have been many. Hey, Matagaijinka, good to see you. I was just talking about. I was late when I started because I was actually just finished cutting up loops from your track, which I'm going to make some stuff. I might even play at the end if we have enough time. We'll see how I get through. One other comment is that, of course, people are allowed to go out for essentials, including going to the supermarket or whatever. So what a lot of families have been doing, apart from the fact that there is no distancing in supermarkets at all. In fact, the supermarkets at the moment are consistently packed, tight, full of people, with long lines to get into the supermarket and out on the street with no spacing, no distancing. And not only that, but because it's like the only time in the day that a lot of people go out, they take the entire family. You can see mums, dads and kids all together going around blocking up in supermarkets, it's kind of crazy. So the Japan Supermarket Association has put out notices, and NHK has been going pretty hard the last 2 days, saying, please, if you go to the supermarket, minimize the numbers of people going. Just go one person if you can. Do not treat it as a family outing, because you're putting everyone in danger by doing that. But a lot of people are doing that. I mean, and there have been other things as well, like, for example, the Tokyo government has been saying kids are allowed to go play in parks. It's okay. Just, try to keep distance from one another. You can run around and do whatever. But like gates, for example, they're leaving a request to leave gates to parks open so that people don't have to all touch the handle to come in. Of course, I was playing in a park with the lad today. I kept the gate open because I saw the Tokyo government advice, but all the elderly people there kept going and closing it. And even we tried connecting it, and you could see they kind of gave me a look, I kind of gave them a look. We both gave each other the same look. They were looking like, how could you be irresponsibly leaving the gate open? It looks like you're doing it on purpose. And I was looking at them, how could you deliberately be closing the gate? Don't you know that you could be killing somebody? But yeah, so again, there are all of these weird social rules that are changing, and everyone's quite confused at the moment. And we're trying to, there is a lot of information out there, but obviously not everybody is getting it. And again, this is the situation where you don't have a lockdown, but you just have a lot of weird social pressure, which people are just generally confused about. I have talked a lot, stocking up on dairy, always, Andrea, my boy. My shopping's been fine, by the way. By the way, the supermarkets here are fully stocked. Even the shortages of toilet paper and newspaper are gone where I am anyway. I know that my area has always been a bit better off than other areas in Tokyo. Tissues and so on are still a little bit hard to get, but we're going pretty well here, by the way. I have no problems with shopping anyway. The main problem is all the people that are shopping. and the supermarkets, because now people are not going into work, so they're actually buying more stuff from local supermarkets, so they're overstocking, which is a good thing, but they're very, very crowded. Right now, it's not so much the main business districts. They're talking about how there's fewer people in Shibuya, in Ginza, in Shinjuku, which is great. But all those people are walking around in their local neighborhoods, and that's creating new kinds of areas of congestion. Jeremiah Kentner, good to see you. You wish you could use Apple Pay at the supermarkets in Tokyo. Well, you can use a lot. I mean, if you have Apple Pay inside your iPhone, you can tap and use Suica with everything. Also, most supermarkets now accept stuff like PayPay, for example, which is a barcode thing that connects directly to your bank account. Credit cards are actually even quite widely accepted. But yes, I quite like. Hey, TQ Sam is here as well. Good to see you, TQ Sam. So yeah, there's lots of ways that you can pay, but Apple Pay just never took off. Amazon Pay as well didn't take off, but PayPay, Origami, Suica, obviously. There's plenty of ways that are not credit card based that you can pay electronically or wirelessly anywhere in most supermarkets. The fight with Taiwan has been blowing up this week. I've been, as I've said on here before, I like Taiwan. Lots of Taiwanese friends from New Zealand. It's kind of, they're in a BS situation. It's awkward, and I understand it's not that simple. Of course, Taiwan is a separate country to China, at least politically. It's a different government, and China does not exercise sovereignty over Taiwan. The problem, of course, is historic. I won't go through the full thing. I assume most people know it. Taiwan is the seat of the original Republic of China, which was the government of China after World War II, but a bit like North Korea, South Korea. The Republic of China, which was the wartime, pre-war, and briefly post-war government of China, basically lost the war with the communists, and they all evacuated to Taiwan, where they took over the island. They imposed martial law, and about half the population of Taiwan are people who evacuated from mainland China, and half the population are people who were already there, and it wasn't an easy transition to becoming the Republic of China based in Taiwan. It was, the Republic of China came and imposed a dictatorship for a long time in Taiwan. However, during that time, of course, the identity of Taiwan is not just, originally for a long time, until the 1970s, Taiwan held China's seat at the United Nations, both instead of being, this is Taiwan and Taiwan is independent and the rest of China is separate. It was never that. It's still arguably not that today. Both countries still claim to be the rightful governments of all of China, and because of that, there can be only one government of China. You can't have two competing governments, representatives of a country in the United Nations or most government entities. And clearly, who should be sitting in the Chinese seat in the United Nations? Well, clearly it should be the People's Republic of China, not the Republic of China. So it's taken a long time, but Taiwan was sitting there until the 70s. So China was pissed off for a long time that Taiwan was blocking China from being represented in international institutions, it's basically for China, the issue of Taiwan recognition. It's twofold. One, to recognize Taiwan inherently means not recognizing the People's Republic of China, 1.3 billion people. In favor of 20 million people, on the island of Taiwan, and saying somehow that their government's not legitimate. So I understand why PRC would get pissed at people recognizing the Republic of China government. However, of course, what's happened, particularly since Taiwan democratized, is that Taiwan's become less associated with the Republic of China, hoping to return to rule the mainland, and they've become more the government of the area of Taiwan itself, and clearly they've been separate for so long. Again, they've become pretty close a couple of times now, under the current party, to declaring full independence, okay, we're not going to claim China anymore, but we are going to say that Taiwan is Taiwan and we're a separate country. Every time they've come close to that, China's said, no, we've always agreed. The one thing that we've agreed when we've been disputing who's in charge of China is both of us have always agreed Taiwan is in China. There's been no question of separation. And this is the thing. Taiwan is kind of trying to, in a way, or at least the current government's trying to move from claiming all of China to just saying, okay, well, we're separate, and recognize us. And China's kind of indicated that they're willing to use military force. They're willing to invade and kill a lot of people if Taiwan wants to try to acknowledge that it's an independent country. So Taiwan's stuck, in terms of international representation. China blocks them participating, particularly in UN institutions, because China itself used to be blocked, and frankly Taiwan used to be dicks about it. And the tables are turned and they're sort of getting revenge. However, that said, clearly Taiwan is de facto completely independent from China, and has been arguably for like 100. I mean, the current People's Republic of China it's never had a historic connection to. And even after the war, when Taiwan was reintegrated with China, it had been under Japanese rule since like the 19th century, more or less. And, so it had basically been outside of mainland China control for more than 100 years. So you have this situation where you have an island with a population that's bigger than Australia, that is in many ways, as modern. I mean, it's comparable in size to South Korea in terms of population and level of development. I mean, it would be an OECD country if it was allowed to be recognized as a separate country. It's got a bigger population than Australia. They're wealthy, and they've been very, very smart how they've handled that, and they're democratic. And they have a fantastic democracy there. I mean, more democratic, arguably, than Singapore. You talk, and the way that Hong Kong's been going lately, you could argue that Taiwan's the best model democracy of a Chinese democracy as well. So there's a lot of great things about Taiwan, aside from of course, all the great people that come from Taiwan. And from that perspective, it's kind of weird when you have the World Health Organization, out of political sensitivity, is blocking the participation of a country with more people than Australia that, one, has knowledge about COVID-19 and has proven that really they've found really effective ways of fighting it. And it turns out that they actually knew about the situation in Wuhan and reported it themselves, that there was human-to-human transmission of a SARS-like virus in mainland China, in Wuhan, in December, 3 months before China itself came forward and said, hey, we've got a problem to the WHO. And again, the WHO, emperor's new clothes, they have to pretend, they've got leaders who were appointed partly because of China. And there's political sensitivity. And I know Tedros himself, who's been a real victim of, people seeing him as a China pawn or whatever, and he's been pushing back, saying that people shouldn't be politicizing the WHO because our function is to manage global pandemics. Well, I completely agree. But that should extend to Taiwan as well. And it's not just Tedros, by the way. He's getting a lot of hate, but there was that guy Aylward. That guy got a lot of, that you saw that interview or whatever, where he was like pretending not to hear the word Taiwan being said. It was just embarrassing. And to me, it actually shines a light on the truth that this is a situation that I think now reality needs to be reflected in what's going on. It's a big, rich, important country, and it should be, surely the international community, should stop being, Taiwan should feel comfortable and have the backing of the international community, even if China doesn't like it, to assert independence, if you ask me. I mean, it is independent. It's never been part of China. And the idea that everyone's afraid that China's going to go and smash them, and that Taiwan, that they readily wield that threat for saying the truth, that they exist, is ridiculous. And again, in cases like this, who knows, if the WHO had started acting on this, taking it seriously 3 months before, I mean, we might be in a different situation. So I find the whole thing with Taiwan, of course, day to day, very frustrating. But particularly in cases like this, one, the detrimental effect that being blocked for participation in the WHO has on the people of Taiwan, which is a lot of people to not have integrated with global health, let alone the fact that they've got something to contribute to the rest of the world, and that in itself has been ignored. So that's me. So yes, that is my thing with that. Anyway, and to be clear, I've worked in Dalian. I've got friends, in Hong Kong, Macau, lived in Singapore, worked in Dalian. I love all the Chinas, but Taiwan, to me, what's happening with them is just BS, right? How many countries in the world do we recognize that have difficult status? But yet, for some reason, Taiwan's supposed to be invisible, and it's just kind of crazy to me. 26% of small companies are realizing any form of telework. This is a problem, again, if you're working on those, and largely it comes down to the technology for it. The idea of remote working technology, remote desktops, use of cloud and whatnot. These things all exist. It's just that these companies are often too small. Well, one, they don't want to invest or change their processes, and it's harder for smaller companies for sure. But in the end of the day, it also shows how in the past a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises are, and this is why they're not as competitive either. So, you know, if there was ever a time to be updating, you know, their technology to enable, in this case, it's for the safety of their own people. One hopes that they do that. If you come into Narita right now, you will have to spend a couple of days. You'll get everyone now is getting tested coming into the country, and you'll have to stay for however long it takes, sleeping in cardboard boxes and improvised mattresses in the luggage pickup area until your test is clear and you can come in. And these stopping and testing everybody at Haneda and Narita today turned up 29 people. Now, some good news today, by the way, that only 165 new cases, which is not only, it still is a terrible number, but it is down from 197 yesterday. So in terms of the curve, it looks good. It's only one day. Typically the dip, it happens on Monday, not on Sunday. So because they do less tests on Sundays and those numbers come up on Monday, we could be in for 2 days with lower counts. We'll see on Tuesday if it's sustained or if it's an anomaly, but it's a good thing in Tokyo anyway, at least in terms of trend. You know what? I didn't read that, Andrea Mowe, the article about Jane Goodall and her views on COVID-19 and nature, etc. I will take a look. Taiwan, don't worry about it. The show is here recorded all week. You can enjoy it anytime, but that happens. Last night, on top of everything else, just a reminder that we are in Japan. There was a pretty big earthquake last night. Again, ever since the 9/11 quake, well, the 3/11 quake, sorry, there was like for 10 years or like a bunch of earthquakes always in the same place up in Miyagi. You know, people up in Iwate and Miyagi were always like complaining, oh, another earthquake, another earthquake. They were getting them every week. And now we kind of give, ever since that finished, it looks like all the energy got released there. And the same thing has now been happening 500 kilometers further south or 300 kilometers further south in northern Ibaraki. Has been basically the same spot in Ibaraki, just north of Tokyo, but adjacent to Tokyo. Has been getting these earthquakes after earthquakes, and we got another one last night. It was actually quite big. It woke me up. So yeah, just a reminder that there is going to be another huge earthquake, and it's going to be pretty close to Tokyo and Ibaraki, and it's definitely, if you get a really big one there, it's definitely going to cause a lot of trouble in Tokyo, a lot more damage than we had during the last one. So yeah, my request to the earthquake, if you're watching this live stream, is please please hold back until we are a little bit better prepared later on. Certainly until after this pandemic has passed, please. I put a track up on SoundCloud today. It's pretty good. I actually made it with the keyboard and with GarageBand on iOS, so I'm using new tools. I thought I figured it out pretty well, actually. So have a look. It came out quite nice. I would like to play something tonight. I've actually prepared Mata Gaijinka's track to be able to play, but we're already coming up on time, and I need to sleep. So we'll see. That's Mata Gaijinka's track. Check it out, Solitude. That's what I have a remix ready to go on. If you are aware, if you're not aware, if you're in Tokyo and you're interested in stats on how we're doing with COVID-19 in Tokyo, there is a website. It's multilingual and it's got fantastic data. It's got everything about the number of people every day, who those people are, where they are, you know, how they got it, the number of tests being performed every day. Lots of metrics are being tracked. All of the stuff. If you you know, all these people who believe in conspiracies, like the government's been suppressing the number of people being tested, you can see all the data here. It's all visible. And you can see what's sort of going on, at least from a perspective of the stats that are available, what data is there, you know. Yeah, it's a fantastic, it's a very well set out site. The person, it was actually based on open source software that was developed in Taiwan, and it was actually used by Tokyo, and it was so good that all the other prefectures adopted it as well. Another thing that Taiwan gave us, so, you know, credit to them. I love these cases so much. The any angle cases from Logitech, you can bend it like this and it's just rock solid and it will hold up like any angle. And like for watching Netflix or whatever, it's just basically like this is the most stable, best case I've ever had for like watching movies I've ever had, and they've discontinued them. And my one, which I have, is great, but it's got this rubber lining, which you can see it's just out of age. I've had this for like nearly 10 years, and lately the rubber started crumbling, and so I get little bits of rubber all over the place whenever I use it. And they don't make them anymore, and it's so frustrating because these are the best tablet cases I've ever used. So I found online. I found a place which still keeps old ones for my iPad 3 in stock. So I got one of these. I've been sending periodic tweets at Logitech saying, why don't you make these anymore? If they made ones now, I would put them on all my cases, on all my tablets. I like them so much, but they're discontinued. But they're the best tablet cases that I've ever used. Because normally, you try to prop up a tablet and always like slides out. It won't keep its position. So I love these anyway. They don't make them anymore, so it's obviously not a plug. But I'm glad I was able to find one. It's kind of a snazzy color. But that is a thing. Masayoshi Son, he is going to be bringing in, he's figured he's got a supplier, he's the richest man in Japan, and he's promising to bring in, the government is promising to give 2 masks to every person in Japan, so 200 million masks. Masayoshi Son is promising to bring in 300 million masks per month from China to give out in Japan. I guess if you're the richest person in Japan, it's great to be able to do that. When he originally said that he would do that, he gets so much bashing whenever he talks. His story is amazing. I mean, he is the richest person in Japan, but he started, literally as poor as you can possibly get in Japan. The story that he is from a Korean family that lived on the edge of a buraku, of a discrimination area in Kyushu, where they take discrimination areas really seriously. He lived literally beside railway tracks in a slum growing up with his brothers and stuff. Suffered both discrimination for living in a discrimination zone, as well as on top of that being of Korean heritage and being, and through all of that, he was just really smart. He got a scholarship. He went to the US. He got a patent on the personal calculator, I think it was, and got royalties of that. And became a really smart investor as well as a technologist, and he's an amazing, his story is amazing, movie material. But people, whenever he says he's going to do anything, the responses on his Twitter to everything are really ugly. They're just people who just like to throw rocks, racist rocks that point out his Korean heritage and so on. And it's still, to me, it's even more inspiring when you see the hate that he attracts, just based on racism, that he's so successful. And again, originally he proposed, I think, getting 300 million PCR tests so everyone in Japan could be tested, and everyone said, oh, that'd be irresponsible. This was after everyone was complaining that there weren't enough tests. But when he said, okay, I'll give everybody tests, he was like, everyone said, oh no, the last thing we want is tests. So he changed his mind, he got masks instead, and he figured it out, he's getting them, and it's a good thing. He deserves a lot of credit for that. That's all the topics that I have. We are exactly up on time. We started 1 hour ago. I could play some loops. I guess I'm not really set up at the moment for doing that. I was hoping I'd have like 15 minutes at the end, so maybe I'll do it next week. I would like to get a bit of a Mark Rebier style, playing some live loops and building them up live on the show, and I would like to do that next time. But that is... The J Vlog, no racism, Kyushu. Funny joke, yes. Basically, racism, in the sense that, in Kyushu, racism is part of the culture, and I mean that racism is defined as racism towards anyone not from your immediate town, especially not from Kyushu. And I love Kyushu, by the way, great people, but they have long memories. If they know your name and what town you're from, they know what your 10th degree grandfather in the Edo period did. So it's not an easy place to have a background like that. But Dave O'Hunter, good to see you. I'm going to wrap up the show there anyway. I do have to shut down for tonight, but hang around, check out my Twitter, check out my SoundCloud. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but check it out because I'm putting tracks up. I quite like the one that I made the other day, Awakening. And I want to make a few more of that sort of a vibe, so tell me what you think about that. I'll see you all next week. Have a good night, everybody. Stay safe. Ilrak 299, good to see you. And all the other names that joined during the show that I didn't keep up with. Stay safe. Keep cool. Remember, this is exactly the safest sort of thing you can be doing right now. Thank you for spending the time with me. Remember to like if you liked. And see you next week. Boom. Peace. Hit stream.